think you can come in here with your I'm sorry's and everything's gonna be okay? I don't think so.
I'll be the first to admit, this one scared the crap out of me. I am talking about the movie Living Dark, the story of Ted the Caver. This one is directed and co-written by David L. Hunt. And this one's actually based on a creepypasta, apparently, although I'm not familiar with the original kind of source material. So I guess you can kind of compare this movie to a mix of The Descent primarily, maybe a little bit of The Pit and a dash of Lights Out. So 2013 movie. And what we have two estranged brothers who are adults, and they've kind of come together after the death of their father. Now whilst they are at the grave, they discover there's kind of some type of hidden passage to our underground cave system. And their dad being a kind of, you know, a cave enthusiast, so to speak, they go and check it out. They kind of find a bunch of stuff down there. And in one particular room, they kind of find the potential entrance to what they think are a virgin cave system, i.e. they're unexplored. And it's kind of a small kind of hole in the kind of the wall. They just think they're going to bash it down and you know, sort of get through it. So they decide that they're going to do it. It's a lot tougher than they initially anticipate. And what you have like a very kind of like narrow passageway that leads then to a kind of a larger cave complex. And the younger of the brothers is a little bit kind of claustrophobic, so he can't really go in there, but the older one kind of does. And ultimately what they discover that there may be something alive down there, hence the title Living Dark, and it's not particularly kind of friendly, and ultimately kind of comes after these two brothers and a kind of some other kind of people as well. So that's what I'll give you in regards to your kind of your basic plot synopsis there. So let's discuss. Now I'm going to kind of give a little bit of mild spoilers on this one. I'm going to try and keep it as vague as I can, but I do have a couple of things that are kind of require me to talk about in a little bit more detail. But let's talk about some more basic stuff first. For me, what worked in this film? I really enjoyed the acting in this film. So primarily we have quite a small cast. And that works, I think, for this film because we do get some decent characterizations here. And we have these two brothers that are clearly, you know, they're kind of close, but they're at odds at the sort of same time. And I really enjoyed the way these brothers are depicted on screen because there's a lot of things that are implied, but it doesn't feel the need to kind of bash you over the head with it and kind of give you loads of kind of exposition. And there's a little bit, but I just think that kind of the way that these two brothers were, you know, they weren't ridiculously kind of estranged. They were just kind of not quite on the same on the same page, so to speak. But they still, when it came down to it, they always kind of snapped back into we're brothers and we've got each other's backs mode. So I thought the acting and the kind of portrayal of these brothers, having, you know, a brother myself, you know, was very good, and I really kind of enjoyed the portrayal and the way these guys were written. That was all fantastic. This movie has some fantastic atmospheric kind of like photography here, the sound design, the lighting. I mean, obviously with a title like Living Dark, you'd expect there to be a good kind of play with kind of shadows and kind of stuff like that. And it doesn't disappoint. There is some really kind of like quite claustrophobic scenes here, and very kind of like this, you know, this kind of presence that you kind of feel in the dark, that you feel is kind of something lurking there, but not quite kind of in the, you know, in your scope of vision, but feels kind of very kind of bad and kind of like, you know, oppressive to a certain degree. Well, that was the actual atmosphere here was great. There are some jump scares in this movie. Now, sometimes jump scares annoy me a little bit when they're kind of cheap and overdone. This film, I think, just comes to the border where I think it's okay. Some people may find it kind of goes a little bit too far on the other side. I actually think it was just enough. But there's a sequence in this movie, and I won't spoil exactly what it is, but it just, like, Jesus Christ, it was just like, ooh, you know, I'm going to need a stiff one after that, Jesus. So it was, I thought it was very well done. It doesn't quite make sense, which I'll come on to, hence the spoilery bit, but yeah, it was good. And I thought it's a relatively slow pace to a certain degree, until we kind of get to the end. But I just thought it was just an interesting story here, and it was very kind of, I mean, there's not loads of different sets. It's very kind of like more or less set in the kind of the one sort of place. But it was good. I mean, I was reading the caves were actually, you know, they're not real caves. They're kind of man-made, or at least some of them are. It does a good job here. They have a great visual of these guys trying to squeeze through this very kind of like sort of small cave, if you see what I mean, by kind of having like a cross section to sort of show how tight it was. I thought that was very effective here. Do I have some complaints with this movie? Before I kind of get onto the spoilery one, a couple of kind of like minor ones. I don't like it when they have forced drama in films, and I see this quite often with movies. So, there's a love triangle. There's always a bloody love triangle. You know, it's just like, oh, do we really need that? I mean, it was such. I mean, to be fair, we know it's not anything we ever see. It's just something that we're told about. But it just seems like, you know, we have to inflate the drama by having like some kind of like, you know, some personal kind of like butting of the heads, and it always seems to be a freaking love triangle. So yeah, that was just a little bit of a kind of a nitpick, because it, like I said, it's not actually anything you see. It's just these guys talking about it. So that was a minor thing. I will say I thought the reveal of what's in the caves is a tad disappointing. Well, in regards to visual spectacle, if you've seen The Descent, it's not a million miles away, but I don't know, it was just not all that impressive. Now, that could be down to budget or something, but yeah, the visuals of it wasn't fantastic. And then I'm going to come on to the one thing, and I'll be as vague as I can, that doesn't really make a lot of sense, but I have to, it's going to be a little bit of a spoiler, so you've been warned. So, this to me has one big flaw in it, and this is why I mention it, because there's something here that doesn't make sense. When we get to the end of the movie and we have our confrontation, our final kind of act, the threat, the antagonists seem tangible. They seem like creatures. They seem like things that you can physically shoot a gun at and affect. If that makes sense. They are solid creatures, alright? However, about the halfway mark, when we kind of first get the idea that there's something alive down there, it's presented to us that these things are more supernatural, more ghostly, more spirit-like, which kind of completely is different to what we get at the end of the movie. Now, there could be an argument to be said that what actually happened in this particular sequence could be a hallucination, but it doesn't make sense because our protagonists have yet to see this threat for it to be something that they kind of imagined, if that makes sense. But we see it, and this guy's clearly awake, he's not kind of asleep. And this is a sequence which is very similar to Lights Out. Now, Lights Out, if you don't know, was a short on YouTube where we had this kind of person who was turning a light switch on and off, and whenever it was dark, they saw a kind of a vision, or like some sort of creature. When they turned the light on, it was gone. Then they made it into a feature film. Now, the original short came out in 2013, the same year as this. So I'm not sure who got there first. It could have been a coincidence. Because this was actually a feature film, I would kind of wager this was probably, really the idea was before that. And that's kind of where I thought it was going, but the end doesn't kind of line up with that. So there's a really big disparity here in regards to what we see at the end compared to the threat as it is shown to us kind of halfway through the movie. That's about as vague as I can be without kind of really kind of like spoiling it. The only other thing I would say, there is a kind of a tertiary character that is introduced, which is clearly going to be cannon fodder, and the way it's played seems a little hammy, I'm not going to lie. However, this film was very effective. I really actually enjoyed the movie. This movie did kind of make me kind of go, oh God, you know, and kind of like be a little bit kind of tense. The ending, I feel, was it lets the kind of the air out the tires just a little bit, because it doesn't seem all that spectacular once we kind of see what's going on. I preferred the threat as it was kind of portrayed like in the halfway mark, if that makes sense. So I mean, I think this movie doesn't benefit from it's not benefited from a bit of a crappy title. In the UK, it's actually just called Living Dark, but apparently in other countries it's called The Living Dark, the story of Ted the Caver, which just makes it sound ridiculous. So I'm glad that the UK is just called Living Dark. But yeah, I thought this was worth a watch. If you like things like The Descent and kind of like, admittedly, kind of jump scary movies, this is definitely worth a watch. And it's got some solid acting from our two leads here, and that goes a long way. And you get some good characterization. I just can't stand movies that have very flimsy characters where you feel no kind of empathy for. But this one does it right. And to me, that's such a big thing. And this is the issue I have with anthologies, because you can never really get it. But this does a great job of really kind of developing realistic, likeable characters who maybe have opposing views, but you kind of empathise with both of them. We have some great horror moments. There's some great atmosphere building, some pretty good jump scares, but then a couple of issues which I've kind of detailed. But I would actually recommend this film. I enjoyed this one quite a bit. I'll give it a 7 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.